Councillor Wood has joined us yet. Is that, you can't see him? Laura, has he doesn't appear to be.
He's on the list of participants.
Okay.
Yeah, he is there.
Oh, now you're here. That's great. Well, we can start off. It's now just after 7. So I would like to welcome you all. We have 2 new members that have joined our committee. That's Councillor Ben Gray and Councillor Richard Marinder. Yes, the 2 waves. So I'd like to welcome you and to also thank the previous councillors that served on the committee, namely Sue Marinder and Councillor Lizzie Stewart.
Yeah.
Now we're... Oh, I don't know what that is. One moment. So a lot has happened since our last meeting on the 27th of January. As you will probably remember, our meeting on the 23rd of March, the first day of lockdown, had to be cancelled. So it really is quite a long delay between our meeting in January, the 27th, and today. So, Sandra, oh no, it would be Laura. Do we have any apologies, please? Or is it Tracy?
We have apologies from Sabina Nelken.
Sabina, thank you. Now we move on to approve the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of January. So if we look at page 1, have I, page 1, any comments on that? Page 2, do we have any comments on that? And page 3. And on page 3, it was resolved that the committee approved the continuation of allowances for councillors, Councillor Murray and Councillor Hughes for the continuation of allowances under the councillor's allowance scheme for Councillor Birchall. That was the last item on the meeting, on the minutes. So can I have, is that, do you approve of this as a true record of the minutes? Are you happy with the minutes? Yes, Tina?
Yes.
Can you unmute?
I'm saying I'm happy.
You're unhappy? What would you like to...
No, I'm happy.
You're happy, fine. Any other comments from anyone? Do I have a proposer for the minutes? Okay, that's Neil. And do I have a seconder, please, Abby? Many thanks indeed. And so I'd better sign the minutes. How do I actually do this? Do I sign this sort of virtually, or Sandra, how do I sign the minutes? Do I do it virtually?
Yes, Chair.
Record
I think eventually we will catch up with them to sign the hard copies, but virtually for now.
Fine, okay, we'll do that then. That's fine. Right, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? Good. And we come to item 4 on the agenda. And this is the cases and workload update. If I could ask Sandra to give her monitoring officer's report to us, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. As is usual, my cases and work update has been attached to the agenda, and councillors will note the number of cases and complaints that I've received since the last meeting. I do need to apologise and correct a typographical error there. It should read 16 complaints rather than 17 since the last meeting. Table A sets out the dates of the complaints that I've received, whether those complaints related to a borough, town or parish councillor, if the complaint has been made by a member of the public or another borough, town or parish councillor. It also confirms the nature of the complaint and what action, if any, has been taken to address the complaint. Councillors will recall at the last meeting they requested that I add reference numbers to the complaints table, which I have done. So those are the numbers that appear along the left-hand side column. Members will note that from the complaints table that a number of the complaints that I've received as monitoring officer since the last meeting relate to Bingham Town Council. Whilst following informal assessment, those complaints weren't accepted under the code. I did, as part of my role as monitoring officer and my role extended to advise to parish councils, decide that it was appropriate, given the theme of those complaints, to write to the parish council, to the town council, with some suggestions on how they may move forward. I therefore wrote to all of the Bingham Town councillors, the clerk and the deputy clerk, formally on the 14th of July. And basically, as I say, that was really just to try and help them to move forward with that. In terms of other work, members will recall at the meeting in January that we reviewed the implementation of the best practice principles. Appendix B sets out those principles that have been adopted, and members will note that all but best practice 7 have been adopted. The delay around that one, it relates to independent persons and rotation and having more than one independent person. Whilst those conversations do continue at my regional monitoring officer meetings, there's only 2 authorities, Rushcliffe and Gedling, as far as I'm aware, that have formally adopted the best practice principles. For that reason, there isn't really an impetus around the table at the moment to capture that one. But as soon as there are, as I say, the conversations are continuing. I do hope to move that one forward. So, save for that one, all of the principles have been now adopted by Rushcliffe. Finally, the responses to the Local Government Association Model Code of Conduct were submitted in accordance with the deadline, and a copy of the responses that were sent was circulated to all members before this evening's meeting. I don't have any other specific points, save for confirming the recommendations in the report, which are to note the report and to note the implementation of the best practice principles. I am, of course, as always, happy to take questions on my report. I think you're muted, Councillor Bailey.
Would anybody like to ask questions of Sandra about her report? Has anybody? Yes, Neil?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, in the list of complaints regarding Bingham Town Council that has been mentioned, and I understand you reported the letter that was sent in response to Bingham Town Council. Do you think it would be appropriate, just to show that we are trying to be a bit proactive, that we maybe followed that up with a letter from yourself on behalf of the committee, just endorsing the monitoring officer's advice, but rather than just dismissing it, then so perhaps they might like to investigate, being as we don't have the authority or power to arbitrate, maybe they might wish to look for alternative means of arbitration, or even to apply to be members of the of NAUC with a view to obtaining further legal advice from that quarter. And probably you might just have to leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I think that's a very valid comment on your part. I think that Bingham Council, if they were to join the LGA or NAUC, I think probably they could get a lot of support and help from them, because I feel we at the Standards Committee really do feel for the residents of Bingham, where they feel that perhaps they're not getting the response to their complaints that they would hope for. So if the committee would like me on their behalf to write a letter to endorse what Sandra has said in her very extensive 5-sided letter that she sent to Bingham Town Council on the 14th of July, I would be more than happy to do that. What I would suggest, if people would like that to be done, is that I could draft a letter and email it through to all the committee members for them to approve or to add any item in that they think might be of help. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Chairman, could I just, you did mention the LGA there. I think that actually the LGA won't be able to provide much support without Bingham Town Council paying a rather large fee for membership. So I don't think that's a practical one. I would just restrict it to saying alternative means of arbitration or potential membership of NAUC.
Yes. So I'm just writing it down. Thank you, Chancellor Hart. I think that is a very good suggestion. Do we have any other comments on this, please? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the point that the monitoring officer made about the limits of our legitimacy or scope to intervene in any way, given that they are an organisation with their own agency, as it were, we should reiterate that point, that we're not in any way attempting to intervene in their business, as it were, but that this is meant in the spirit of being a supportive suggestion, and that they may well have considered this themselves. I don't know whether other parish councils might offer some kind of arbitration support or willing to bring two partners together around the table to discuss it, to two sides or whatever it is, but that there's some means by which there can be a positive route through, because the danger is that the issues such as they are become entrenched and very difficult to overcome if there's no a formal means of achieving arbitration. So perhaps just that we're clear that we recognise they have their own appropriate officer to deal with these matters, but that this is meant as a supportive suggestion that might help to find a path through some of the issues that they're facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. That's very helpful. Does anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? Councillor Gray.
I just wonder on that, and again, realising that Bingham Town Council have their own sovereignty, whether it was something that would be possible that we could offer cross-party arbitration. Again, not perhaps in our formal roles as councillors. I wondered if that was something that was possible at all.
What is the monitoring officer's thought on that? Do you think this cross-party arbitration might be a solution? What, in your experience, would you think to the suggestion?
In terms of the role of standards committee, it doesn't extend to that. And I would also remind members that the reason that the cases are presented in the way that they are and the information is limited to the extent that it is to protect the impartiality of members should complaints come forward in the future that need to be referred for formal investigation and then perhaps to a subcommittee hearing, not necessarily in relation to a particular town council. It could just be in relation to similar issues. There could be then a question over impartiality of members. So that's not really in terms of the remit, in terms of reference and the role of standards committee, although I do understand the sentiment.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cumberlack. Councillor Cumberlack, you need to unmute.
Yeah. Yes, I thoroughly agree with what Sanjita just said. I think we need to remain impartial and independent in any comment that we make. And as they are autonomous, then they have to make their own decision with regard to arbitration. But any recommendation we make should be totally independent.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. And Councillor Mallender. Councillor Mallender.
Yeah. I was just saying, I also think the idea of independent arbitration is a good one. I totally get Councillor Gray's, suggestion. I think it's like a kind offer to make, but we risk amongst other things getting drawn into discussions at loads of other towns and parish councils as well. And I think it might set a precedent that we'd struggle to possibly keep up with any workload. So I think an independent arbitration would be the best route for them to go down in this case.
Thank you. Oh yes, John Bagley. Oh, could you unmute? Could you unmute, John? You need to unmute. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
I can now, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, the generality is, of course, as Sanjit's been explaining, the Standards Committee has no sort of formal action overview of an independent town council. And basically, unless there's a complete catastrophe, nor has the council, the borough council as a whole. And in this particular instance, I think we've got a problem with some dual-hatted members anyway, which would could cause great problems as sorting out conflicts of interest. And as the previous speaker said, you know, and it would act as or could act as an example to others that oh, when we're in trouble, we can ask the borough council to sort it out. And legally, life is not set up like that at the moment.
I think the danger would be, Chairman, as well, that if you did go down that road, if they didn't like the answers they were being given, then we would have no credibility because we would have no authority, and we might end up with the bad reputation rather than anybody else. So, as I say, it's the credibility and the authority that would be missing.
Fine, thank you for that. So coming back to John, could I ask you a question? Incidentally, our two new members, I'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor Comeback. Our two new members, Ben Gray, Councillor Ben Gray, and also Councillor Richard Mallender. You may wonder who John is. John Baggerly is the experienced independent person who is the person that will be consulted by Sanjit when she gets a complaint that comes into her. So John has got a wealth of experience that we really do need to call upon. So John, your thoughts before we come to a conclusion, your thoughts would be perhaps that we write to Bingham Town Council and suggest that they go to arbitration through the help of somewhere like NALC, do you think, or would you suggest some other?
I would suggest the independent arbitration, probably actually not NALC, get someone from outside the whole system, but is used to arbitrating in such matters, and there are professional bodies that do this. And it would be expensive, but they brought it on themselves. I think that over the past several years, pre-Sanjit's troublesome times, that there's been prolonged lack of professionalism shown at councillor level, I'm afraid, at Bingham, and it's about time it did come to a head and was settled.
Thank you very much, John. And now, did I have Councillor Cumberland waiting to speak?
Yes. All I wanted to say was somebody, I can't remember who it was, suggested that maybe we went to another council and asked them, and I'm assuming they meant town or parish council within the borough. I don't think I don't think any other town or parish council would want to get involved, but I also don't think that is a very good course of action. I think it could cause all sorts of problems. I agree with John that we ought to have somebody independent. Yes, they brought it on themselves. Yes, it's going to be expensive. I'm not sure that NALC should be ruled out, but that, of course, would be for them to decide.
Fine, thank you. So, are we sort of in agreement then, particularly with John Baggerly's advice, which I always find extremely useful because of his experience? Would we be happy then to for a letter to come from our group to Bingham Town Council suggesting an independent arbitrating body should be consulted by Bingham Town Council to try and sort out this really lengthy mess that really is not serving the interests of the local residents of Bingham, who really deserve better. So would you all be happy for this to go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fine. So do I have to take a vote on that particular item in terms of sending a letter, Sanjit? Would I be well advised to take a vote on this?
Yes, I think if you move that as a recommendation and that is seconded and then a vote, that would be procedurally correct.
Thank you very much indeed. So could I move it as a recommendation that we, as a monitoring standards committee, that we write to Bingham Town Council advising them that they ought to contact an independent arbitration body to try and help them resolve the problems that they're currently experiencing. So do I have a person to propose that? Thank you, that's Tina Cumberland. And do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gray, thank you very much indeed. So that really brings us on a little bit further we've discussed obviously that. Do we have any other discussions that we want to make over the best practice, of which there's only best practice 7 that needs to be discussed? Does anybody want to discuss this or not, this particular part of the best practice principles? Are we happy with that? We are, fine. Can we then go as far as asking, would somebody, if I read out the recommendation, which is to recommend that the committee note the report, Sandwich's report, and note the implementation of the best practice principles. Do I have somebody to propose this?
Before you move on, Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
So where are we? Who's this?
It's Kerry on the phone.
Oh, Kerry, yes, by all means, I couldn't see you. Yes, thank you, Kerry. What is your question?
Just before we close the report from the monitoring officer, I wonder if she might give us an update on the timeline with regard to the consultation. So we've filled in the consultation exercise, but what's the timeline from here on in?
Oh, thank you for that, yes.
It remains unclear because of the fact that because of COVID, everything's just sort of a bit up in the air at the moment. So it is something that we discussed at our regional monitoring officers meeting. At the moment, we're not sure. We were hoping it would be sort of November, December time. The LGA would send out the further documentation, but that's not confirmed. But we're hopeful it'll be November, December.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Kerry, thank you for you were one of the members that did actually reply to the LGA consultation. Many of the members did, not all, but many of them did. And we do appreciate you as one of the independent persons who have actually contributed quite a lot of comments to the LGA consultation draft. So thank you for the model member code of conduct. So I do appreciate that. So, Sandra, am I fine now to go ahead with asking for a proposer and a seconder to the recommendation that I've just read out? Am I all right for doing that? Fine. So, might I have somebody that would propose the recommendation that I've just read out, or would you like me to read it out again for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Councillor Clark. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Brennan. Thank you very much indeed. Really, that almost brings our meeting to an end. Do we have a date for the next meeting, Sandra? Is it likely to be in about January time?
I'm not entirely sure. Perhaps Tracy, are you still on the call, Tracy? Yes. Perhaps Tracy could confirm. I'm not entirely sure if a date has been set.
I am still on the call. I will have to look, so I'm not sure myself. just bear with me.
It's the 22nd.
Can I jump in? I was going to say it's the 22nd of February at 7 o'clock.
Oh, February, sorry.
It is, yes.
February at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you to all of you that have turned up for the meeting. Thank you, Sandra, as monitoring officer and borough solicitor, for helping us through what has been quite a contentious meeting, I think, in terms of how Bingham Town Council is currently working and the work and the efforts you've put into trying to help. Thank you also, John, for your expert advice. It's much appreciated as an independent person and our 3 independent members for all the help they provided. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Abby Brennan. She's been contributing to our group for the time she's been on the committee, but she leaves us because she's becoming a cabinet member on Thursday this week, on the 1st of October. so she will be going to greater things. And so we will be welcoming at our next meeting in February, Councillor Debbie Mason. And also to thank, as I did a little bit earlier on, Sue Mallender and Lizzie Hewitt for their work previously on this committee. So thank you for your attendance and thank you for turning up today. Thank you.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.